Hi, ladies and gentlemen, lovely listeners. I'm Caleb Lamte, your host for the Young and Old podcast. In this podcast, I interview some of Africa's top achievers across various disciplines all over the world. They share their habits, values, and principles that have brought them this far. Stay tuned and enjoy the conversation. Our guest for today is Jennifer Baffour-Awuah, General Manager of Anoah Mothercare, a renowned mothercare in Accra, Ghana. She talks about her life in Ghana before moving to the UK. With her life in the UK as a young person, she connected with authors like Maya Angelou, Atta Aidoo, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, among many who were afar. She found these female authors as a drive to get engaged in women or female rights activities. She later returned to Ghana working as women rights coordinator for Action Aid. She was also a lecturer at the New York State University where she resigned to focus on her family business, which is the Anoah Mothercare. You can find Jennifer on Facebook, Teens for Jesus GH, Serendipity Blue on Facebook as well, and Instagram JenniferBaffour-Awuah or Serendipity Blue One. So welcome Jennifer Baffour-Awuah, and thanks so much for joining us today. And I believe we are going to learn a lot from our discussion today. Anyways, to start with, please, we are on.
Oh, I'm just good evening to all. I am grateful and honored to be given this opportunity to share life lessons that I think has helped to shape my life thus far, and pray that it will be useful lessons for others to also learn from. There's a saying that we don't have one doesn't have enough time to learn from the mistakes they make. So rather, it's best to learn lessons from the mistake that others make to help you avoid those mistakes. So I hope that things that I have done, experiences I have acquired, lessons I have learned, um, can help someone else avoid those mistakes, um, and have a much better, fulfilling life. Yeah.
All right, then I am sure this conversation is going to be fun, and we hope our listeners stay put to it and not miss any point or anything said so far. So to start with, did you really have any mentors when growing up? Was there ever a time that you saw someone as a mentor and or a role model?
Um, yeah, I saw authors as role models when I was growing up. I think the books that I read, I was very much interested in Black African women writers at the time that I was growing up. Authors such as Maya Angelou, um, authors such as um, Atta Aidoo, um, another one that I think shaped me. Oh, she wrote the book Beloved and the Bluest Eyes, and um, oh gosh, what's that? Toni Morrison, um, and then the woman that wrote The Color Purple and the Life of Copeland, Alice Walker, um, and then Merita Golden. Um, who else? A Nigerian writer called Emma Emishuta and Blessing. Um, yeah, those Black African writers, um, although Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, and Maya Angelou were not African, or didn't identify themselves as African. They were Black African American writers, but they acknowledged the ancestry to be in Africa. So those Black women writers, I suppose, really influenced the way that I thought, the way that I I um, I looked up to them. The little that I could glean about their life from their writings. Maya Angelou wrote poetry, and poetry related very much to her life. Um, and so when I read her poetry and I wrote her books, some of her books, especially I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, which talks about her life when she was young and the abuse that she had experienced, and the fact that she voluntarily decided to be silent for most of her childhood and not speak for many years, because when she did speak the name of the person that had abused her, that person was killed deliberately, intentionally by a family member. So she decided that she wouldn't speak again so that she would not have blood on her hands. Um, that's her own personal story, that book. And the other books that she wrote, her poetry, or also certain parts of her life when she was struggling as a young writer, when she was having relationships, basa basa. She wrote about her life, her hardship, her difficulty. An angry letter in January, for example, was describing a time when she went to see a bank manager in January and she tried to get a loan, and the way that the bank manager related to her as if she was a non-entity because she was a woman, you know, it was very the poem was very poignant. And yeah, I remember that. Ama Ate do No Sweetness Here. I also remember that. Those stories kind of shaped my life. The Alice Walker's books, The Color Purple, the Life. What was that one? The one that I also another one I read, the Life and Times of Grange Copeland, the story of a man that was abusive towards his family, physically, emotionally, and psychologically and financially abusive. And how his family coped with that. Um, yeah, I think as a young person looking to those authors, it gave me a sense of um, mentorship. I think they were mentoring me through their writings to acknowledge the strength of womanhood, femininity, um, sense of I and who I am, and not to be ashamed of it, especially Maya Angelou's writing and Toni Morrison too. To be very independent, to be confident, to be a goal getter, to know that even as a woman, there's no limitation, there's nothing you cannot do. And don't let the world or society tell you that you can't because you're a woman. No, that is not was it's not part of the vocabulary. So many of these stories was about um, similar themes. It's about like a phoenix rising out of the ashes, and the phoenix being the woman. That no matter what situation you put the woman in, whether it was abusive, whether it was nice, whatever the situation is, woman would always rise. It would always rise. And I was very much shaped by those stories, and those women. And so I remember in my house that I lived in England, I had stenciled on the wall, and still I rise. And that is a verse out of a poetry that Maya Angelou Maya Angelou wrote is one of her very famous poems that's um, like entitled "And Still I Rise," and is talking about um, a woman that is often spoken about um, negatively, different imagery of women, a woman that people will be doing concern about her, people will be discussing her, calling her names behind her back, will be trying to paint her negative and trying to put her down. But at the end of every incident that people try to put her down, she doesn't let that circumstance overcome her. That she always overcomes it, and hence the phrase "and still I rise." You know, so I stenciled it on my wall in my house to remind myself that no matter what the situation is, no matter what people say about me, no matter what people think about me, no matter the hardship I go through, no matter the challenges, the frustration, and still I rise. So I think my mentors were in literature and literary mentors. Those are the people that mentored me when I was growing up. I didn't have physical people in my life. I had literary figures that I read and they mentored me. Yeah.
All right. I mean, they are loaded. A lot of people too. And I think the one who wrote Purple, is it Chimamanda Ngozi?
Uh huh.
Yeah, I think she wrote Purple. Yeah, I think so. But you mentioned that these people changed the way you thought.
Uh huh.
And I'm interested, what was the way you thought? Because they changed it, it brought about and still our rise and all that. So what was the previous thoughts about yourself?
Oh, when you're growing up as a young person, when you get to a certain age, you start to form your self identity, that you look around and sometimes you see people that are like you and sometimes you see people that are not like you. And I remember very much when I was growing up, I grew up in the United Kingdom, and in my school, I went to the UK when I was about 10, 11 years old, and I started schooling um, from year six. And then I went to um, secondary school, the whole of secondary school there, then university. And I think when I first went to the UK, having lived in Ghana for my childhood, um, I was a little, um, my home life, I think, made me feel very um, shy, very non confident. I lacked self esteem. I was very unhappy in my childhood because I think of the way of where I was. I lived very happily in Ghana with my maternal grandmother and my cousin and my uncle, and I was very much a child that was shown love and doted upon by my grandmother. And when I left my grandmother and I went to live in England with my paternal grandmother and my father's side of the family, the situation was very different. Um, I found myself living in an environment where I wasn't doted upon. Um, I was very much like somehow I would say abused, um, like emotionally abused and sometimes physical. So it left me feeling very sad, very lonely. It had an effect on my self-esteem, on my confidence. Um, I didn't do very well at school during my adolescence. Um, I also in school, I had a friend. It had an effect on my friendship, my ability to make friends. Um, so I had very few friends, and one of my friend that I had at the time, that my bestest friend, I worked with her closely, I think for about 2 or so years, and then she developed a brain tumor. So she left school very early. She was hospitalized for several months. And then after hospitalization, she had to convalesce at home. And then she never returned to school. So a lot of the time at school, I was by myself. I didn't have any friends. So for me, as a young adolescent, growing up in an environment where in school I was lonely, at home I was also lonely and sad. I was very much, I very much felt excluded, socially isolated, lonely, sad, and didn't have a sense of self, you know? And so when I would read this kind of books, I would find self expression in them. I would find comfort. I would find that, yes, I find my identified with some of the characters in the book, and I identify with their pain, I identify with their loss, because I lost my friend. I mean, she didn't die, but the fact that we weren't able to be at school and I lost that friendship, it was a loss, you know? And so, me before was kind of sad, very sad. So, those books mentored me very much so, you know? Yeah. So, that's how I was before.
Oh wow, this is so touching. Okay, so for those who didn't hear the books, I think I can just play back and you hear the authors she mentioned and all the books. And you mentioned that you didn't have any physical person as a mentor. Was there
Hmm.
any reason for that?
Oh, um, because like when I was at home, the the people that I saw around me didn't have a lifestyle that I wanted to emulate. And then when I was at school, like I didn't necessarily have a mentor that I looked to, but I had a teacher that I think had faith in me. And he saw me in a clearer light than I even saw myself. And he would motivate me and encourage me. And I also had an English teacher, Miss Wigglesworth, who kind of picked up on the fact that I was very good at English as a subject. So she really encouraged me with reading, with like studying English. Though I never went on to study beyond my O levels, but like she encouraged me as a person. And then my economics teacher at O level, Mr. Marybox, he also like I say his name and smile because he always used to give me little life lessons. He is the kind of teacher that whenever he'll see me, he'll call me, Jennifer, come and sit in my office. So I come and I go and sit in his office, and he'll start preaching to me, about things. Jennifer, when you grow up, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And I'm like, okay, Mr. Marybox. and then he would like, he lived on my way home. So sometimes when he was going home, he would give me a lift home. And in his car, he would talk to me again about life lessons. And then he would drop me off at home. So I suppose, though I didn't look to him as a mentor, but I suppose he spoke into my life. And so did my English teacher, Miss Wigglesworth. So I perhaps they were my physical mentors, but I didn't really look to them as mentors. But they spoke to me positively. you know in terms of my home life, there was, like I said before, there was nobody around really that I felt merited that position as a mentor. No.
Okay, I see. Um, I want to go further, but we'll do a playback. So, tell us how you started. I mean, your background in academics, where you started studying, where you were born, and all these things. If you could give us a brief summary of that to your tertiary education, then we can move forward, or we can continue at where you are now. I have some questions noted, but let's go back and see how your life was from childhood, where you were giving birth and all that.
Okay. um well, I'm told by my mom and my grandmom when she was alive that I was born in Takrady, specifically Kwesimintim, um, which is just beyond Takrady. Um, and we lived in Kwesimintim for several years when I was a baby. And then we moved from Kwesimintim to live in Aneji, which is a suburb of Takrady. And that is where I remember growing up. I remember living in Aneji in an estate house, B13, our house number was. And it was just across the road from a cemetery. Our house was adjacent to a cemetery. And as a child, I never feared, though it didn't really bother me at all.
I
But
see.
I
Mhm.
lived there with my grandma, my uncle, my auntie, um, and my cousin. And my mom at the time was a nurse at Ifia Kwanta Hospital in Second D, so she didn't live with us. So I stayed with my grandma. Um, so I lived there for many years. I went to school in Topridge Preparatory School, which is in Takrady. I was a day student at first, and then after a little while, I became a boarder. I think for about a term, I didn't like it, so I came back home after about a term. I just couldn't cope. Um, and then I finished. I carried on as a day student, and I went to Topridge up until just before common entrance, up until maybe I was 10 and a half. Then my dad, who was living in England at the time, came to Ghana to pick me up and take me to England for schooling, to continue my schooling there. So I arrived at England um, in about 10 and a half years. And I went to stay with my paternal grandmother in a suburb in London called Cricklewood. I stayed with her and went to school. I went to year six at Anson Primary, which is also in Cricklewood. And then I went there only for maybe a year. And then the following year, I went to secondary school at Elstone Secondary School in Brunsbury and Kilburn, Brunsbury Park, which is also another suburb in northwest London, and I stayed at Elstone from Form 1 all the way up to Upper 6. Then I left at Upper 6 and went to university in Kent at Canterbury. I did my degree. And I stayed at Kent for 3 years. And after Kent, I took a year out. I worked. And then I went to East Anglia University, no, University of Norwich at East Anglia, and did my master's. Yeah, so that's my educational life. When I was in Ghana, growing up, living in Aneji estate from what's maybe like from 5 years up to about 10. Yeah, it's about 10 and a half. I think I was a very carefree child, extremely so. I used to roam around the estate. It's a very big estate. I used to roam around the whole of the estate, knocking on the doors of houses that had children in it. And they would all come out on the street and we'd all play. And I think at that time, Ghana wasn't as scary as it is now, where everybody's so mindful of children's safety and all that. We would all just hang out in the street and play, 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 play. So I'd go and knock for this person at their house. They'll come out, play. We go and knock for that person. We'll come out, we'll play. After school, we'll play till I don't know, till it's time for bathing and eating and then bed. And I was a very popular child in my neighborhood when I was a child. So like everybody knew me, and I also knew everybody and every member of every household. I was like the local
I see.
assembly girl,
I
to
see.
the extent where when a stranger came into town and was lost, and maybe um, they were looking for a particular member of a family or something, and they didn't know where to go. I remember one incident where a stranger came into an edgy suburb and was looking for a family, and they didn't know where they were. And then they knocked on our door, and my grandma was like, "Oh, me, I don't know where they are, but wait, 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 let me call my granddaughter." Then she called me and said, "Rabna, mommy, so shushe, asimasi, them coffee, what's ha?" I said, "Oh, yes, I mean, you want what ha? And don't call for now. Echo left, echo right, echo them, about who one. Won't fear your pink house, no. I wanna." So I would give people directions to other people's houses because I knew everybody and everybody knew me. And especially because my grandmother was mixed race. So everyone, when they see me, I said, Mami Brunye, na Roko no. So they would
Eh,
always also identify me by my grandmother because my grandmother was mixed race and she's the only mixed race person in the community. And she baked bread, so that people
Sorry
will
to
come.
interrupt, but um, the language you spoke for, I mean, listeners who are not Ghanaians or who
Oh,
don't
I'm sorry,
understand.
sorry,
So
sorry.
can you translate when you say sometimes translate it? Me the Ghanaians can enjoy it, but they might not get it. So sometimes translate it for us to get it. That's
Okay, so like the people that would knock on the door and I don't know where they were going, my grandma would call me and say that, oh, Ravna, these people are looking for such and such a family or such and such a person. Do you know where they live? And I said, yes, of course. And I would direct the family or that person to where they're going because I knew everybody and everybody also knew me. And people knew me especially the more because I was the granddaughter of a mixed race woman. and she was the only mixed race woman in the community, so she stood out. And on top of it, my grandmother used to make bread and other pastries, and people used to get their bread very hot in the morning from her. So our house was like a focal point for bread and pastries and all that. So people immediately, when they see me, they're like, ah, I know this girl. This girl lives in that bread they sell house. Her grandmother is a mixed race woman. And also I wasn't a child that would sit still. I was constantly roaming. I'd roam, 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 roam. To the extent where sometimes my grandma would send my uncles and my cousins, go and call Irabna to come home. It's late. Where is she gone? So they'll come looking for me. Say, Ma says you must come home. It's late now. So I was a bit of a kobolo. I don't know how to say kobolo in English. I'm sorry. I was a bit of a kobolo girl.
You're allowed. You can pass on that.
When I was growing up. But I loved it. I really, when I recall my early days in Ghana before I traveled, I have such fond memories, of my life as a child. From what I can remember up to about 10 years old, I felt loved, I felt wanted, I felt part of a community, I felt valued, you know, and yeah, I loved it. I loved it. I always remember those times very fondly.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're really memorable times. Maybe you
yeah.
should sit and record all those times
You
and
see,
play it
oh,
yourself and relax just listening to your stories. It could be
yeah,
fun. Yeah.
it's good.
So the point you spoke about your teachers.
Uh huh.
Yeah, you mentioned that some of your teachers had faith in you. Some advised you, and one even usually preached to you in the form of giving you future and advice.
Yes,
So point or how do you see teachers in the life of students? Because you are the second person talking about how a teacher influenced you, and I
yeah,
believe just as teachers influence you, there are other people the teachers influence them negatively, maybe
yes.
made them lose faith in themselves and all that. How do you see teachers in the life of kids or children?
Okay, for me, I think that teaching is a calling. You know, teaching like nursing is a calling that God has to call you to come and do. You have to have compassion for children. You have to have thick skin also for children, because children can be very mean, especially teenage when you're teaching teenage children. Um, you have to have the patience. You have to have genuine love for children and for nurturing their mind. You know, you have to be understanding um, for to their psychological and emotional needs. Teaching is a real work of love, of 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 commitment, a real work of passion for children and their education. And their education is not just book knowledge. Their education comes from you wanting to see them be a better version of themselves that you are seeing now. So it's part of you nurturing their potential to be who God made them to be. So for me, teaching isn't just about sitting there and teaching them one plus one equals two. No, it's about the totality of the child's being, not just the academic one plus one equals two and how well they perform, but also self esteem, also helping them with even who they are, building them up to who they are and who they can be, instilling confidence in them, trying to build up their self esteem, trying to encourage them and motivate them to be who they are, trying to also correct them when they've done something that is wrong or you think they can improve on. You point it out to them and encourage them and point and help them to be a better person. It goes beyond just sit there, let me teach you one plus one. and then go and chew and pour. No, it's not that for me. It's not that because my teachers never did that to me. Mr. Marybox, like this that I was talking about, he took a personal interest in me, not just because I was doing economics. Even for his class, I think I got a C. But he took a personal interest in me for whatever reason. I don't know what it was, but somehow God made him be like the male figure in my life that I liked. So he would talk to me, he would encourage me, motivate me. Days when I felt like, oh gosh, I'm so lonely. I would find Mr. Barbas would find me somehow and say, come and sit in my office. Jennifer, come. So he'll sit me there and then he'll be talking to me. So it's almost as if I didn't even feel like I didn't have any friends because the teacher took an interest in me, you know? And so I'm sure he must have been aware that I was lonely out there on the playground, maybe sitting on the bench by myself. And so him wanting to um, minimize my sense of loneliness, he then called me into his office, keep company with me, and then in whilst doing that, he would talk to me, words of wisdom, you know. And so for me, it helped my self-esteem. It helped me with my sense of value and who I am and who I was and who I'll become. And some of the lessons he taught me, I remember some of them up to now, you know. And so whatever his intention, his voice spoke in my life. So and he was a teacher. So teaching is not just, imparting knowledge to pass tests or exams in the child's mind and then ticking your box that, oh yes, I've got all my 10 students in my class have got above 90, so I'm a really good teacher. No, I think teaching is much broader than that. It goes beyond that. And the person who can call themselves a teacher really is called to do that job. They're really called. That's why I think teachers deserve our utmost respect. And anyone that has education, a total education, should thank a teacher. Look at me now at the age of 52. I remember a teacher that taught me when I was like 14, 15. And his name is not something I had to struggle to remember. It's always at the top of my head. I remember him because of what he imparted into me. I remember Miss Wigglesworth because of what she imparted to me. The other teachers in my life, I don't remember their names. And I've had so many, even at university. I've had so many lecturers, professors. I don't remember them. But I remember these two people because of the impartation they had in my life that was beyond academics.
Wow, I see. Yeah, so you've made us understand that impactful teachers, you always have them in mind. I mean,
Yeah.
you might not be the best in their class,
No.
but they might be the best to you.
Yes.
And that is a solid one. I think sometimes when we are young, we don't actually see that way. We think of it as the one who maybe helps us pass our exams or we do well in the exams.
Hmm.
Maybe is a favorable one, so we
Yeah.
like that person. But I think with respect to time, as you have grown older, you realize those who actually made impact without even being the best student in their class.
Yeah.
And that's something we should note, and I think we young people should put that in mind, that
Hmm.
sometimes you don't always have to be the best, or yeah, be the best with that teacher, but what he lives with you
Yes.
actually for your life is more important than what he gives to you for an exam.
Yes.
And that is very, very necessary.
Yeah.
So, what do people do when they do not have physical mentors? I mean, for you, you found yours in literature, and can you tell us how
did you meet some of these writers and authors? Because some people feel like they are not getting mentors. They don't find people they connect with. What advice do you give to them from your
Oh,
experience?
for me, I found mentors in books. They were distance away, miles and miles away. These people I'm talking about were in a different continent altogether from me. The Maya Angelou's, the Toni Morrisons, the Alice Walkers, Atta Aidoo was in Ghana, but all the other three I mentioned before all lived in America, and I was living in the UK, and I didn't know them. I didn't know them personally, but I found their books. I think I found their books through Miss Wigglesworth, my English teacher. Um, I think I read, which one did I read? I think I must have read, or was it Oprah? I think I watched an Oprah in the 80s and 90s. Oprah Winfrey show was very popular at the time. And so I think I remember seeing Maya Angelou in one of the in a show, and that sparked an interest, and I started reading her books. And then thereafter, I started researching Black women writers, and then it took off. I just started reading. I couldn't stop reading the books, And in England, they have a whole section in the library. I've always loved books. I always read incessantly, even from when I was a child, and that's something I've imparted into my children to read, because for me, reading takes you to a different country. It takes you to a different world, in your mind, and you do it all from your bum. You don't move, but your mind moves. Your mind travels as you read the pages, and as the word of the pages leap up to you, your mind conjures this image of the words that you're reading, and you imagine the world as you perceive it from the author's writing. Can you imagine that power? Can you imagine that imagination that you need to have to conjure that image? So I found it so liberating to escape from my reality by reading some of these books, because it would take me away into a different world, sometimes an even sadder world than mine, but sometimes a much joyous world than mine. But whatever the experience was, I loved it. I loved imagining, and I would let my imagination run wild. And I always used to have the books inspire me to do that. So I'd read and read. I remember every Saturday or whenever I get a chance, I'd go to the library. And the good thing about England is that every community has a library. So I'd go into the library armed with my library card, and I would pick out like 8, 9 books, and I'd be reading them every week. I'd read my books, and I'd take them back, exchange them for new books. I read a lot. I used to read because I didn't have friends. So books were my friends. So I would imagine a whole life through my books. So for me, my mentors came through books. And if any young person doesn't have physical people around them as mentors, turn to your books and read them, or turn to the writings of people that you see from a distance that you respect. It could be pastors. I mean, it could be maybe a pastor, and you like what he says, or some aspect of what he says, though they're also not perfect, but you like some aspect of what they say. So you start reading their books, and you start letting them speak into your life and mentor you, like maybe writings of Bishop Dag. I have a friend that actually looks up to Bishop Dag and reads a lot of Bishop Dag's works, and also listens to his preaching, and actually has Bishop Dag as like a spiritual father, but he's never met him. you know? And for me, it was like that with books. So, in the absence of physical people, you can have the mentors through books, through teachings of others, through historical figures, that you learn from, through Jesus, the teachings of Jesus can mentor you, can teach you what you need about every aspect of it. Even when you pick up the Bible, from every issue you have from A to Z is addressed. If you want to know about business, read the Bible. If you want to know about marriage, read the Bible. If you want to know how to raise children, read the Bible. So that what perfect book to mentor you than the Bible? So that is another perfect example of a book that can mentor you. But for me at the time, I didn't turn to the Bible, I turned to literary works of Black women, you know? So you can also do the same if you don't find physical people around you that can mentor you. But I believe seriously that whether you find physical people around you or not that you see as mentors, God would always find a way of bringing people into your life that can speak into your life, that will guide you along the way. He doesn't leave you stranded. God will never leave you stranded, whether you know Him as God or not. But if your heart is right and if you believe the plans He has for you, whether you know the plans or not, I believe that God would always, always have somebody walking alongside you. Whether you acknowledge them as a mentor or not, that person will be walking alongside you and mentoring you, even though you may not realize they're mentoring you. Because God works like that. It's only when you take a step back and you look back over your life and you think, wow, all that time that person was with me and I never realized, that is what they were doing. But they were actually walking right beside you, holding your hand, helping you all along, but you didn't even realize. So yeah.
Wow, I see. So I think those who give the excuse that they don't have mentors, you've been addressed. Just get to your books,
Yeah.
get a Bible. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're a Christian, and
Yes.
you get all the guidance and mentorship you need.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, want to talk about getting into your work and job.
Mm-hmm.
What was the first job you took after school, or what was the first job you took in your life? Yeah, let me say that.
Hey, the first job I took in my life. Wow. I remember. Oh, very first job.
At least as a neighborhood girl, I mean a popular one, I'm sure you could have gotten job offers since you are known and you
Them
can
that
get
were
people
paid.
to purchase.
None of them that were paid. You see, so I didn't consider them jobs. Like
Okay.
my very first job, I
Mm-hmm.
was very young, very very young then. If you're looking at that, those people that I sold. I
Yeah.
used to sell house to house.
Okay.
When I was younger. Um, I wasn't paid, but I would chop some of the money. Whenever my grandma, I said earlier that my grandma would bake bread and she would make other pastries like buffroat, which is donut,
Mhm.
achumo, um, and stuff like that, chin chin and things like that. So when she would make them, um, sometimes when we had some left over, I would have to walk it round the neighborhood to sell. So after school, when I came back, before I go to play, sometimes my grandma would accost me and say, "Oh, go and sell this for me." So I have to walk it from door to door to door in my area to sell it. And when I sold it, of course, I'd get money. And somehow, miraculously, not all the money will make its way back to my grandma's hand. I'll chop on the way.
No
So
problem.
back, she would be
Mhm.
like, "Hey, is this all my money?" I'm like, "Yes." So she said, "Hey, some of the money is missing." They'll say, "Oh, ma, ah, ah." relax yourselves.
I
You
see.
know, so that was like one of my first job. And then to also make ends meet, there are times when my cousin and my uncle and we would go into the village, Aneji village, which was behind our estate, way deep in behind our estate in the forest. We would go and buy sugar cane. We would walk for miles to go and buy sugar cane, um, and what do you call it, and sponge. The sponge that's not the net sponge. You know, there's this traditional sponge that's
Yeah,
made
the
out
wooden one.
the
I mean,
wooden
like,
one,
yeah, the
yes,
wooden one. Yeah.
and that is now like used to bath dead bodies.
Dead bodies. Yeah.
Yes. So we would go to the village and to the source of it and buy that and bring it back to the house. And then we would, if it's sugar cane, we would clean it, and then we would like peel it and cut it up, and then I would swire it on my head, take it to the nearest market, which is the Efiekuma market near Efiekuma in Takrade, and I would sell it. You know, I had a spot where I would sit and I would sell the sugar cane, or I would sell the sapo, the sponge, you know. And there were times when instead of going house to house to sell the buff fruit, the donut, or the bread, I would take it to my spot at Fiekuma market and sell it, you know, before I came home in the evening, you know. So that was like, I remember the job, that job. And sometimes when I tell my kids that I used to do that, they can't believe it. They were like, no. I'm like, yeah, I did that. And it wasn't like for a year, I did it for many years. I used to do that, you know. So when I see those girls selling in between the cars, they're selling pure water, they're selling chewing gum, or selling phone cards, whatever on the street. I tell my kids that don't think that the the end is what you see now. I used to be like that. I used to sell like that, you know, and look at how far God has brought me. So those people that you see selling pure water and things, that is not their end. That is part of their story. It's part of their testimony, you know, and their end will be so much more glorious than this, you know. So my very first jobs were those, you know, those kind of jobs. At the time, it was a little financially, it was very hard for us as a family. So everyone had to do what they needed to do to support, you know. So we would do that. I would do that with my cousin and my uncle, who were similar in ages, to try and support the family. We all had little businesses. You know, my uncle would sell poultry or rabbits, um, and then I would sell the sugar cane and the sponge and the buff fruit and the donut, the buff fruit and the bread. My cousin would also go do the poultry and the rabbit with my uncle because we're both boys, you know. Yeah, we were very enterprising at that, even at that young age. And then when I left Ghana and went back to England, I didn't do any such job, because over there they had rules and laws governing what a child can and cannot do. So I remember fighting with my dad that I wanted to work after school, and even at weekends. I wanted any little job, maybe like a Saturday job, so I could earn some money for myself. Maybe I want to buy a few sanitary items like shower gel or whatever for myself. And my dad was like, no, you from legally in England, from about I think 12 years old, you can work, but not very small hours on a Saturday morning. So I could do like a newspaper run where I would send newspapers, local newspapers, through the letterboxes of homes, and the company would pay me. So I said, yes, I wanted to do that. And my dad said no. And then when I grew up a bit, I said, okay, I wanted to get a Saturday job. When I turned 14, 15, 16, I said, I wanted to get a Saturday job in a local retail shop so I'd get some money. And my dad once again said, no, I can't. So whatever money I needed, he would give me. And I said, no, I wanted to work because it was like working is like in my blood. And he was like, no, you will not go to work. If you need money, you ask me and I'll give you. And I said, no, that be I don't want it like that, you know? So in the end, we came to a compromise. He said no, he wanted me to do better at school. And so he would pay me to go to the library. So I said, okay then. So every Saturday, I remember my father, this started from when I was 16, yes. So from 16 to the age of 18, every Saturday, my dad would drive me to the library in Swiss Cottage in northwest London, and I would sit there from morning till about from 9 till about 5 studying. And then after I studied and came home, and he would come and pick me up as well. He would give me £20. So, and £20 at that time, even £20 now is quite a lot of money. Even then, £20 is quite a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Every
it's still a lot of money.
Yeah, my dad would give me £20. So I was very happy. Studying to get paid, study and you get paid. I'm like, wait, this is good business. So
It's truly a good business.
yes, so it's very good. But he got what he wanted. He wanted me to study and do well in school, and I also got what I wanted in terms of having money that I can call my own, so that I can buy whatever I wanted with it without him having to buy it for me. So I wanted some independence, financial independence, and also independence to make decisions on my own. And I got that. So we were both happy with that arrangement. Yeah. Yeah. So that was like my very first job also when I came to England. And then when I finished university, my first degree, which was in social policy and administration, I went to work with the local government processing in a housing benefit department, processing applications from people that were applying for government assistance in paying their rent. So I was working in a small office with a small group of people in an office based in Sydenham, which is um, an area in southeast of of London. And it was good. I liked it. It was my first job. I learned. Yeah, it was good. Yeah, that was that.
Okay, I think they're interesting jobs. But
Yeah.
before that, so some people might not understand why your dad was so focused on you doing well academically or focusing on your academics than getting a job. I think there's a backstory to that. Talking about you failing your exams,
Hmm.
you have to resit and focus on all that. Can you hit on that story? What happened? You failed your exams and you had
Yeah.
to and all that. Can you tell us that story? Yeah.
Okay. So, when I left Ghana and I went to England, I was staying with my paternal grandmother and my paternal aunts. And I think my dad was away. My dad wasn't living there. He was away in a different town in England, in Manchester. He was studying for his um his law degree. Um, he went back to school as a mature student and was studying for his law degree and trying to qualify as a barrister. So he wasn't at home with us. So my paternal grandma was in charge of me. And I don't know, but for some reason, she was very harsh towards me and made things very difficult for me at home. So I had a very bad experience in the sense that I wasn't very happy at home. I was always miserable, very lonely, very sad, and I was more or less used to do a lot of the house chores at home, cleaning the bathroom, sweeping the floor, hoovering the carpet, doing the washing up, helping to make dinner. So it was left with very little time to study. So by the time I come back from school, school finishes at 3:30 in England. So by the time I finish school at 3:30 and I walk home, my school from my house is maybe like a 40-minute walk. So I'll get home maybe like 4:30, sometimes quarter to 5, because I would like lunge around a bit before I came home, walk slowly because I didn't want to come home. So I would like get in maybe about quarter to 5, or sometimes earlier to be half 4. Then the moment I got in, I'll have to start doing house chores. There'll be a pile of washing up waiting for me. Then I'll have to like coordinate with my grandma what we're gonna have for dinner, to start making it, you know, and then I have to hoover, clean the bathrooms and all that. By the time I finished about 7:38, my breath, I'm tired. The last thing I want is to or I want to do is get my books out and do homework. Sometimes I tried, I would do my homework. Other times too, I was too tired to do it. So I wouldn't do any homework. And then I'd go to sleep. And the next day it would start all over again. So consequently, when I took my O levels, I failed most of them. The grades were pretty bad. Either I think the best I got was a C. The rest were D's and E's. I never got an F, but it was D and E's. And it was like, oh my God. So when my dad saw my report card, he was like, what? No, 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 no. This no child of mine is that stupid, you know? So my dad was very angry and then decided that he'd finished his law degree by then. By the time I took my O levels and the results came out, he had finished and he moved back to London. So he said, okay, I should come and stay with him. So he took me from my grandma's house and I went to stay with him. And my dad is a very strict disciplinarian. He was in the army in Ghana. So my dad was very strict and he doesn't mess with education. He's very focused on learning and education. And my dad would push me to study, even to the extent where when he'd be watching the news, he would call me to come and sit with him and listen to the news and pick out words from the broadcast words that I did not know. And then the words he will have me look them up in a dictionary and then have me try and use them in a sentence so that I would be familiar with its meaning and its usage. So I had a book, a little notebook of words that I had acquired in that way. He'd also have me reading like quality newspapers, like at the time, The Guardian and The Times. I'd read them. They're big newspapers, they're huge in size. He'll have me reading them on a daily basis and underline new words that I didn't know as a way of building up my vocabulary. And so, and then whenever I come home, um, he would be like, have you got homework? I say, yes, okay, go and do it. So I have to go to my room. And I also had my own room when I stayed with my dad. So I had my own room. I had a desk. So I'd go in there, I would sit and I'll do my homeworks. I had the time, I had the space, I had the equipment that I needed, and I had somebody that was encouraging me, that was supporting me, you know, actively. So, and he was ensuring that I would actually do it. So every day he would he would do that, you know. And so it was no surprise when I said that, oh, I wanted to go and work, and he was like, I don't think so. And I'm like, oh, but I need some freedom, I need some money. And he was like, no, 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 no. You would go and you will study in the library and I will pay you, you know? So that's what he had me do. And he made me, well, he didn't make me, but what he said to me that I remember distinctively was that until I went to university. No, he said what he said to me. I think he said it when I was about 16, 17. And he said, when I kept moaning that what he was doing was suffocating me. Because, when you're young and someone is trying to help you or put you in a straight and narrow, you think, especially your parents, you think, my God, these people are killing me. What is all this? You know,
Very true. Very
you,
true.
you, you start kicking against it. These
Yeah.
people, it's too much. I want my freedom. Why? Every day do this. Every day do this. It's too much. You be moaning and groaning, not realizing that the way that they're trying to mold you and shape you is for your own good,
Yeah.
you know? And for me at the time, I thought my dad hated me. I thought he really hated me. I tell you the truth. I thought this man doesn't like me. Mommy, is making me tired. I had no fun. I even the little the friend, the one friend that I had that I told you was that went to the
Diagnosed with a brain tumor.
yes, he wouldn't even let me go out with her. I wouldn't outside of school. We couldn't hang out because every time I came to ask my dad for permission to go out, when she got better, to go out with her, she was like, "No, you can't go. Go and study. Friends always lead you astray. No, no, no. Go and study." I'm like, "Hey, you know." And then he said to me that, you know what, Jennifer, I want you to work hard and get yourself to university. The moment you get into university, your life is your own. I would have done my job, and whatever you want to do, you can do it. If you want to sleep till kingdom come, you can sleep, but you will get to university. And I said, okay, dad, you know. So I realized that even though I was still feeling frustrated by his actions, I realized that what he wanted from me was just for me to study and get myself to university. And then once I did that, he will back off. He will give me my freedom that I want. So I also, though I still resisted, but I tried to buckle down, and then I cooperated. I went to study on Saturdays in the library every Saturday. He gave me my pocket money as he promised he would. And funny enough, I was the only person in my school that got to university in my year. All my colleagues at the school went to polytechnics. At the
Wow.
time in England, there was a distinction between polytechnics and universities. And so some people apply to university and some people apply to polytechnics, and some people apply to both, and I applied to both, and I got my place at polytechnics tend to be of a lower, if you get lower grades than expected, then you go to polytechnics. Or like if set the course you want to do, certain courses are only done in polytechnics, the universities don't do it. Polytechnics tend to be more um, practical practically based courses. than university. University were more theory based, and then
Yeah.
polytechnics were more practical based. Like if you want to do a Greek science, you don't go to university, you go to polytechnic because they'll take you out to the farm and you do practicals and all that. You know, so like some people, their courses was only done in poly, and some people the course was done in both poly and uni, and so you can apply to both. And I applied to both, and I got admission to both. And then my grades was good enough as predicted to get to university. So in my year, I was the only person that went to university, and I was so proud of myself. And I was so proud that my dad had forced me or coerced me to study like that. So when when a time came for me to emigrate out of Ghana and come to out of England and return to Ghana to live for good with my family, my kids, and my husband, I wrote my dad a thank you card, and thanked him so much for what he had forced me to do. That if he hadn't pushed me to study hard by even bribing me, I don't know where my life would have been. I don't know what would have become of me. You know, that
Yeah.
now I see that education truly was my passport to the life that I have. That it really helped me. Not only did it give me academic qualifications, but it enlightened and broadened my mind. It allowed me to be who I am. The experience of university life, like the friends that I made in university, like my confidence changed, my self-esteem went up, my outlook and my perspective changed from all the people I was meeting, and I recognized that my dad played a huge role in that. So I had to acknowledge it to him when I was leaving as a grown up, when I was leaving England, that you know what, Daddy, I never told you this, and I don't think I ever have, but thank you so much for what you did for me, you know? Yeah. And he was so tearful when I told him. It was like, he was very tearful. He never expected it, you know? But that's the joys of parenthood. When you're parenting your child and you're forcing, not even encouraging, you're forcing them to do something, they'll hate you and they make you feel like you're a hateful parent. Why are you making me do this? And I don't want to do this. But later on in their future, they sit back and they realize that you did it because you love them. And the wisdom and the things that you see ahead, sitting down as an adult, they as a child standing up, they don't even see. They don't see it. But because of your wisdom as an elderly person, and because you wanted to be well with them in the future, you push them, even sometimes against their own will, to do what you need them to do because you know it will end well for them. you know so sometimes I wish I parallel that with God, and I wish that God would take away our self will and force us to do certain things, because those certain things will be good for us and are good for us, but
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
he can't do that. He gives us free will, and so we end up foolishly choosing wrong things, and then we end up bumping our heads.
Mhm.
And then we have to backtrack and say, hey God, I beg you, I repent, oh, you know Ah, but that is life.
Uh,
So
oh,
that's
I
the
think yeah.
backstory.
Yes, the backstories are so sobering. Like they just make you think about yourself and wonder, like, are you doing the right thing? Maybe if you are young, you are think, are you heeding to your parents? Do you see them that
Yeah,
way? And I think these things help restructure your mind and the way you see certain things. I believe if
yes,
we get to notice or get to learn some of these things earlier, we'll appreciate it more when someone is trying to influence our life, and
Yes.
sometimes being acting as it's a force, not even like
Yes.
an, as you said. So it's good to hear this, and I hope we are. I mean, as listeners, we are taking whatever we have to take from it. And so you mentioned you emigrated from the UK to Ghana with your
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Reason behind that?
Oh, the reason was that, in England, I had um I met my husband there at university when I was in Kent doing my first degree. And then he was doing accountancy and computing. When he finished a year ahead of me. He was ahead of me by 1 year. So he finished, he came to London, he got himself a job, but we were still seeing each other. And then I left also. I came to London. I got myself a job. Then I decided that no, I wasn't quite finished with education. I wanted to go back and do my masters. So I went back, and then my husband and I got married, started a family and all that. And we're both earning good money, working, getting on with life. We had the children and all that. But I never quite felt satisfied, and I never quite felt comfortable. I think partly the main reason was because of the weather. England, it's very cold. It gets cold a lot in the winter. The months of, I think, like late September up to like early March, it's cold. And in England, if it's not cold, it's raining. So a lot of the times, the kids were always indoors because it was raining or it was cold. And if it's cold and we're going out to play, they'll be all padded up with coats and our jackets and hats and gloves and all that. And I remember one time saying to my husband, there's got to be a better way of living than this. They just got to be. How can we live in a country where 9 months out of 12 we are inside the house and because it's cold? What kind of
Okay.
this? I can't do this. And I think I had a condition called SAD, which was SAD is one is connected to the weather. Yes, that's it. It's called seasonal what's the A
It's
stand?
seasonal affective disorder.
Yes, seasonal affective disorder.
Okay.
So I
This is a
remember when
type of depression, right?
yes,
That is related to changing seasons and
in
beginnings
weather.
and ends at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I remember, I think when it got to winter, I would be so miserable. I felt so bad, so sad. And I was like, what? I don't like this country. I really don't like this place. And I'll forever be moaning and moaning to my husband. And sometimes when I wouldn't even want to go to work, I'd fake sickness because I don't want to go to work, you know? So what I started doing was I started coming to Ghana during the winter months. I'd come to Ghana for the long period. So I changed I did the same work, but I changed my condition of work. Instead of working in a job as a permanent worker, I worked as a locum. So I worked as a temporary worker in my job. So for 9 months, I would be a locum worker. And then for 3 months, I would come to Ghana on holiday. I'll stay in Ghana for 3 months until the deep winter months had gone. Then I'd come back to England. Luckily, my kids were also living in Ghana at the time with my mom. So it made it easier for me to come to Ghana to see them, you know. And then in the 9 months where I was in England, I'd work as a locum, and I'll let my employer know that I'm working from January up until October, up until September. Come September, I'm out of here. So I can contract with you only between these months. Are you okay with that? And I say, yeah, fine, cool. Because as a locum, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So And when you do work, because you don't get the security of job, your salary is higher. So I worked like that for many years, and kept coming to Ghana for 3 months, 3 months, 3 months out of the year until I convinced my husband that, you know what, I'm really happy when I'm in Ghana. Let's move. And he was like, hey, how can we move to Ghana just like that? In England, we are very settled. We have our houses, we have our cars, the children come here on holiday and everything is cool. And I'm like, yeah, but I want to make Ghana our base. And then if we want to travel to England, we can travel to England. But I want to really make Ghana our base. Let's move to Ghana. So we started making plans to move to Ghana. But we didn't move immediately. It took us like 6 years to like get ourselves together, to get the funds to build our house, to buy the land to build the house, to prepare ourselves before we finally moved to Ghana 6 years later. So when we took the decision to move and when we physically moved, it took 6 years. Then we moved. And then I came with the children first in June 2005. Then my husband joined us in December 2005, and then we've been here since. Yeah.
Hey guys, thank you for listening to this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. We promise to bring you new episodes weekly. Subscribe on the various platforms you listen to this podcast on. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at The Young and Old, and on YouTube at The Young and Old Podcasts.